Hey, woo! Peace, y'all, and welcome to the channel of the Moon's Prophet. In just a few days, on January 26th, Neptune enters Aries. This crossing marks a climate shift in our collective story. Aries carries the forces of creation and destruction, so in our personal lives, we're invited to create and begin again. On the collective level, it's already clear that we're in an era of wars, conflicts, chaos, and competition. History shows that creation and destruction rise together. The magician and the warrior draw from the same fire, so it's up to us what we do with that fire. And speaking of fires, over the last couple of days, solar activity has surged. According to geophysicist Stefan Burns, whom you can find on YouTube, we've been experiencing historic once-in-a-decade solar storms since January 18th, the day of the new moon. That was just 2 days ago. One thing I like about Stefan Burns is that he tracks the alignments of the planets to predict earthquakes. So, like an astrologer, he's tracking conjunctions, oppositions, and squares to understand movements down here on Earth. It's very cool. So, I had to sneeze. So, the sun has been throwing lots of sparks. Pressure is building. We're entering an unprecedented era. Things heat up even further when on February 13th, Saturn follows Neptune into Aries. Neptune remains in a sign long enough to set the atmosphere of entire eras. Saturn moves quickly enough to shape how those eras are lived. Neptune establishes the climate, Saturn delivers the weather. Over the next 26 months, Saturn will move through Aries, traveling inside the field that Neptune is creating, adding pressure, form, and consequence. 1 week after Saturn enters Aries on February 20th, Neptune and Saturn meet in the very first degree of the zodiac. This conjunction is one of the defining astrological moments of our lifetimes. Things are heating up, y'all. They're getting really hot. And to grasp the scale of this alignment, we have to understand these two planetary forces: Neptune the dream, Saturn the form. In the first part of this series, I took you deep into the world of Neptune. If you feel called, that video is already there for you. In this one, we turn our attention to Saturn. Fair warning, I've split the Saturn transmission into 2 videos. In the first one, we get acquainted with the archetypal field of Saturn, and we begin the house-by-house reading so you can understand how this transit will impact you personally. In the second video, we finish the house-by-house readings. Trying to hold everything in one container was proving a little too much, so I split them into 2 to make it a little easier for myself. I'll share the second part in just a few days. Let's get into it. Saturn is both astrology's most infamous planet and its most misunderstood. Even people who know very little about astrology have heard of the dreaded Saturn return. Saturn has a reputation that precedes it: heavy, serious, demanding, the taskmaster, the tyrant. Saturn is a planet people brace themselves for, yet the fearsome side of Saturn is not the full story. Today, we enter Saturn's field with open and clear eyes. Every planet carries teachings. It's up to us to receive them. And like all the planets, Saturn corresponds to a function of consciousness within us. As above, so below. The Saturnian function within us teaches us to stand upright in time. When Saturn is expressed in health, it shows up as wisdom, integrity, and quiet strength. Saturn is pragmatic and grounded in what works. While preparing this video, I considered presenting Saturn in a very stripped down and dry kind of way. Structural, almost PowerPoint-like. That approach felt fitting for Saturn, but then I remembered something important. We are in the final weeks of Saturn moving through Pisces. I mean, that's why I'm making this video, and Pisces loves nothing more than to commune with the divine. So before Saturn crosses into Aries, let's honor the energies of Pisces by spending time with the deities that resonate with Saturn's archetypal field. Once we've done that, we'll go house by house so you can understand how this transit will affect you personally. Saturn corresponds to the structure of time. It is duration, consequence, gravity, and continuity. A field where effort accumulates and builds into lasting forms. A place where life invites us to grow up, to endure, to take responsibility for what we create, for what we have done. Saturn speaks to the Cailleach, who rises from pre-Celtic layers of Gaelic memory. She's a deity that emerges from the rough weather of winter and the hardness of stone and mountain. In astrology, when you hear mountain, think of Capricorn. Capricorn is one of the signs that receives power from Saturn. Aquarius is the other. The Cailleach shapes the landscape through pressure. She teaches that time leaves marks, and that those marks become form. The Cailleach carries the elder face of Saturn. The elder understands time because they have lived inside its rhythms. They know how choices unfold and how experiences yield wisdom. The archetype of the elder moves with discernment and patience. Many people experience the blessing of getting old. Far fewer become elders. An elder is someone around whom young people joyfully gather because they radiate a wisdom and a peace that make children feel seen, safe, and at home. Saturn also speaks through Ptah from ancient Egyptian cosmology. Ptah incarnates the intelligence of making, the descent of idea into matter. His is the hand that follows the mind with dedication and precision, building the world piece by piece until it can stand on its own. Ptah teaches that responsibility is creative. What endures does so because it was built with care and ingenuity. Ptah shows us the builder face of Saturn, the part of us that understands how real things come into being through time. The builder works with sequence, rhythm, and continuity. They return to the same task with fresh attention over and over. The builder creates a life by honoring process. They stay with what matters. They lay foundations that support weight, responsibility, and vision. This archetype teaches us how to shape dreams into forms that endure. Saturn comes to us as Shani from the Hindu and Vedic traditions. Shani represents karma in motion, time experienced through lived consequences. He moves deliberately and steadily, teaching that effort ripens into wisdom and responsibility matures through consistency. His teachings show up as karmic circumstances that deepen understanding. Shani carries the archetype of the authority or the sovereign. The sovereign's defining characteristic is that they locate authority within. The sovereign looks inward for clarity, steadiness, and guidance. They create structure so energy has direction. They establish boundaries that protect what is essential and focus effort where it counts. The authority of sovereign beings is quiet. It speaks through consistency rather than command. This is how self-respect takes root. Saturn expands into Kala from Hindu and Tantric cosmology. Kala is time itself given form. He carries birth, decay, dissolution, and return. Through Kala, Saturn reveals that all things move within time, and that form, loss, and renewal are shaped by its passage. Saturn also moves through Cronus, a god from ancient Greek mythology. Cronus is a titan of harvest, succession, and generational order. He builds through seasons, structuring inheritance, authority, and the transfer of power across time. Through Cronus, Saturn teaches that maturity includes release, that every generation carries legacy and responsibility together. Beneath the archetypes of the builder, the elder, and the authority is a deeper force, growth itself. Both Kala and Cronus give form to Saturn as the psychic function that turns experience into wisdom. If you think of Saturn as anything, Think of it as a function of maturation within you. It is the part of us that gets us up early and keeps us up late, moving steadily toward our dreams. It sustains effort across seasons. It brings vision into form through commitment. Saturn is the part of you that keeps your word. If you told your neighbor you would clean their yard on a Saturday, Saturn is what moves you into action, even and especially if you don't feel like it. The maturation function within you remembers the promise and honors it. Through the maturation function, we create integrity. It shapes the reputation we carry as someone whose yes can be trusted. Effort, discipline, and follow-through are how our lives gain coherence. Everything meaningful we have brought into being has passed through Saturn. Every skill refined, every structure held, every dream made tangible. Saturn teaches us how to become someone we trust. When the imperative to mature is ignored, this energy can turn outward toward control and fear. The myth of Cronus shows us the dysfunctions of Saturn. Cronus is the Greek god who famously ate his children because he feared they would take his power. He consumed the future to preserve the past. Healthy expressions of Saturn help us to align with time so that we can pass the baton to the next generation when they are ready to take it. As long as we respond to that inner call, possibility remains wide open. All of these divine beings possess power that moves through patience and gravity. They build through sustained effort. They mature through time. They remember what has been done and what has endured. Saturn shapes reality by inviting responsibility for what we create. There is another dimension to Saturn, one the ancients understood well. Wherever Saturn lives in your natal chart, it marks a karmic blockage or wound. This blockage did not originate in this lifetime alone. It reflects patterns carried across lifetimes, a memory held in the soul. In those other lifetimes, energy tightened in a specific area of experience. Structure formed around survival. Control developed where openness once felt unsafe. This rigidity was an intelligent adaptation that helped the soul endure real conditions. When a soul incarnates again, this adaptation does not disappear. It reappears as circumstance. It shows up early. The karmic wound marked by Saturn tends to surface in childhood through lived experience, through caregivers, environments, expectations, or the absence of what was needed. This is how karma becomes personal. What the soul remembers, life reenacts. And what once protected the soul can begin to constrain it. An adaptation that worked before can limit growth now. Saturn marks the place where this shift is asking to occur, where an old strategy is ready to be outgrown. And wherever a deep wound exists, deep potential exists alongside it. If this sounds unclear, don't worry. We're about to get very specific about what this means. It's vital that we understand the karmic dimension of Saturn. Without it, it's impossible to grasp the meanings of the Saturn transits that we experience. The best way to understand how Saturn entering Aries will shape your personal life is to spend time with Saturn in your natal chart. The house that holds your natal Saturn shows where the original blockage formed. The sign adds texture and style, yet the house reveals where this lesson lives in your real life. Take a moment now to locate Saturn in your natal chart. To generate your birth chart, go to astro-seek.com. Click on birth chart. Enter your birth details. And there you have your chart. Saturn is this S-like figure. It's in the 7th house. And you can see very clearly which house Saturn is in using the table to the right. Each planet is listed. And there's a number by each one indicating the house. Alright, y'all. Instead of moving through the houses in order, we're going to move through them by element. We're doing it this way because Saturn teaches at the level of the element as much as it teaches at the level of the house. When we group the houses this way, the deeper pattern becomes easier to feel. The Earth houses are houses 2, 6, and 10. Saturn in Earth teaches the soul how to build value that lasts through effort and responsibility. The water houses are houses 4, 8, and 12. In water, Saturn teaches the soul how to feel deeply while holding on to oneself. The air houses are houses 3, 7, and 11. Saturn in air teaches the soul how to speak, think, and relate with integrity. And the fire houses are houses 1, 5, and 9. In fire, Saturn teaches the soul how to act from inner authority and agency. In the second house, we learn unshakable self-worth. If you have Saturn in the second house, you are still learning the truth that you are an infinite being of eternal value. Your worth does not fluctuate. Quite likely, early life carried scarcity and insecurity. It's very likely that you didn't have all you needed materially. Some of the people that I've read for that have Saturn in the second house were born with more than enough materially, but their caregivers were emotionally withholding and neglectful. Wherever the lack lived, the lesson arrived early that stability was unreliable. To adapt, many try to prove their worth to their caregivers, to show them that you are worthy of being fed, clothed, sheltered, and loved reliably. Through trying to prove your worth, you develop a clever adaptation with the side effect of deepening the wound because you are trying to prove something that doesn't need proof. Every soul is inherently valuable. Trying to prove what exists beyond proof, this dishonors us. It creates a wound. So, the more we try to make worth tangible, the more the wound expands. Often with Saturn in the second, you see people overcompensate in adulthood by accumulating a lot of money and possessions. They're still trying to prove to their mom and dad that they are worthy. Just as often with Saturn in the second, you see people who spurn capitalist symbols of worth like money and possessions. This is another expression of the same pattern. The work of Saturn in the second is to discover value that does not fluctuate, to experience your worth as an inner quality that exists beyond measurement, evaluation, and external validation. When this work integrates, the individual becomes deeply grounded. Money becomes a tool rather than proof. Desire moves cleanly, value stabilizes. Second house authority lives in the knowing that nothing we do increases or decreases our value. Our souls possess eternal worth. The sixth house is where we learn embodied alignment. This house is archetypally resonant with Virgo, and like Virgo, it receives power from Mercury. Because of this, the sixth carries a student frequency. It's a house of learning through practice, repetition, and correction. This placement often carries memories of lifetimes spent in service, lives organized around duty, usefulness, and improvement where being needed mattered more than being well. If you have Saturn in the sixth house, early environments often carried mixed signals around order, care, and what was expected. Sometimes there was structure without meaning. Caregivers were rigid without explaining why. The body learned discipline before it learned trust. Service arrived before devotion. In a house shaped by learning and refinement, this easily turns into over-responsibility. The student tries to get it right and to avoid mistakes. To adapt, the psyche learns to manage life through control. Being correct becomes a proxy for safety. And here's where the earth part comes in. The body learns to hold tension that belongs to the psyche. Earth holds an imbalance that begins in air. Because the sixth is sensitive to ideas of improvement and error, this placement is often susceptible to perfectionism, anxiety, and guilt. And because the body becomes the repository for this psychic strain, many people with Saturn in the sixth experience challenges with their health. Symptoms become signals that alignment between body, mind, and daily rhythms is needed. I know several people with Saturn in the sixth who live with chronic conditions, including autoimmune diseases. Healing can begin through movement and through experiencing the body as a place of intelligence and trust. The work of Saturn in the sixth is synthesis, to bring mind, feeling, and body into rhythm, to allow daily life to become ritual rather than burden, to let care be precise and alive rather than rigid, to realize that wholeness is preferable to perfection. Sixth house authority emerges through embodied listening and service that arises from true devotion. The 10th house is where we live out our purpose. If you have Saturn in the 10th house, you carry a wound around responsibility, visibility, and authority. Often, people with Saturn in the 10th have lived many lifetimes where they were seen, relied upon, or held up as representatives of something larger. This speaks less to fame and more to being on a stage, being watched, being counted on. In early life, this karmic wound shows up through authority figures who were inconsistent, stretched thin, unreliable, or hypocritical. So you adapt by internalizing authority before the self has space to fully form. People I've read for with Saturn in the 10th often had to grow up quickly. They took on real responsibility early. They became parentified. So identity organized itself around what was required, and doing what was required gained them recognition, so ambition grew even further to stay safe and to receive attention. Perhaps caregivers were unavailable or overwhelmed. Maybe you learned to make breakfast, manage siblings, or track adult concerns before childhood had fully unfolded. Either way, the psyche learned to climb. Responsibility became identity. Recognition replaced belonging. The wound here lives in the fear of insignificance. Often they wonder, who am I outside of these roles and responsibilities? The work of Saturn in the 10th is to align outer roles with inner truths, to allow achievement to serve purpose instead of using it to protect identity. When this work integrates, this placement produces true authority, leadership grounded in service, ambition refined into stewardship. The individual becomes a builder of structures that outlast the self. 10th house authority consists in holding responsibility without letting it define worth. Visibility becomes a channel for service. Authority becomes something lived rather than a burden unconsciously carried. All right, y'all. That's what I have for now. In the next video, coming in a few days, we'll keep moving house by house so you can feel into your Saturn wound and understand how Saturn entering Aries is activating it in real time. Until then, I'll be watching the skies. The solar activity is loud right now. I feel it in my body, in my pace, in my sleep, and the way rest and movement need to dance together these days. And I keep having to remind myself that even though the sun and moon have moved into Aquarius, we are still moving through the new moon phase. And that new moon in Capricorn was intense. Every major planetary body showed up and showed out. The sky moved as a whole. Even the Earth scientists are paying attention. So look, if you feel like you're missing some details, like you need some more context, check out my video on Neptune entering Aries. It opens this 4-part series. This video right here is the second transmission in that series. And if these messages are landing for you, subscribe and stay close. All right, y'all. I see the sun is coming out. I'm about to go to the sea. I send y'all courage for the road ahead, compassion for what is shedding, and blessings for what is taking shape. Until next time.